Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 1986 sequel, The Karate Kid Part 2. Now, The Karate Kid Part 2, to me personally, is a really underrated sequel. It's a very solid sequel. It does what a sequel is supposed to do, and does it remarkably well. And for me personally, it's my favorite film in the Karate Kid franchise for that reason and for a few other reasons as well. It's one of those movies that the more times that I watch it, the better it gets. And I'm hoping that because of the resurgence of the Chosen character in the Cobra Kai Netflix series, I'm hoping that that brings more eyes to this film because it definitely deserves it. Now, the film is directed by John G. Avildsen, who also directed the first film. And Avildsen's direction here, in my opinion, is terrific. It's some of his finest work. Not only does he pick up where he left off with his ability to really showcase the best around when it comes to shot selection and techniques, when it comes to anything involving a fighting scene. He also is in rare form when it comes to other sequences. The way that he showcases the setting of Okinawa, which wasn't technically shot in Okinawa for real, it was actually shot in Hawaii, but the way that he shot those scenes where Daniel and Miyagi are training, or they're having a moment with one another on the beach, those sequences are absolutely stunning. Like, this is a really great looking movie from a visual standpoint. And it's just one of those films where it's a visual treat. There's a lot of splendor. There's a lot of things to really admire and appreciate when it comes to this film's visuals. And a lot of it comes down to the director and how masterfully he handled all of those elements and brought them to the screen. And it also did help that Avildsen, at this point in his career, especially after already directing The Karate Kid a couple years prior, he was a guy who knew what worked when it comes to this franchise. Like, he knew what the strengths were, and he also knew some of the weaknesses. So he was able to learn, adapt, and grow, and deliver an even more knockout performance when it comes to the direction with this sequel. So much so, I honestly feel that his direction in this film, as good as his direction is in Rocky and The Karate Kid and other movies, I think that this was his best. I think this is the best direction of his career, because this is the moment where he really was at his peak, where he had all of the knowledge that he had obtained over the years and just used it to perfection and just created a film that just looks spectacular. Now, the film is also written by Robert Mark Kamen, who wrote the script for the first movie. So the continuity that you have here with this sequel really does pay off. You have the same director behind the camera. Then you have the same writer. And there are instances where this can lead to a franchise being stale, but I don't think with the second film that's one of those problems that you run into, especially this soon after the first movie. So this was actually a big win for The Karate Kid Part 2, in my opinion. And I felt Robert Mark Kamen's script was stupendous. I thought it was a really excellent script. It built upon what was set up in the previous film and really created a story that was able to stand on its own. They didn't just do the first film again. They put Daniel and Miyagi in a different setting. They took them overseas to Okinawa. Once again, you did have the kind of fish out of water thing with Daniel, but it was written in a way that didn't make it feel like it was just deja vu. Daniel also evolves as a character. He's able to handle his own more. He's able to take care of business, kick some ass, uh, win a contest, and break some ice, and gets involved in a fight to the death and wins. I love that about this script. I love that it sets up Daniel in a way that really makes him grow and become a much more stronger character as a result. I love that he's the one that's there for Miyagi when Miyagi is at his lowest point, when his father dies. I love that moment between the two on the beach. I love how it has some parallels to the moment where Miyagi shares his vulnerability with Daniel when he talks about what happened to his wife and his son. I think it was his son, but yeah, it was his wife and his kid who both died during childbirth. I love that there's a parallel there where now the roles are reversed and Daniel makes the connection and the bond with Miyagi even stronger by being there for Miyagi at that moment in his life when he's lost his father. There are just so many things about this script that are just textbook examples of how to make a sequel and do it the right way, which is why it's so astounding to me that this is not a film that's talked about more by critics and by other people, because it is a really good sequel. And in my opinion, it's actually better than the first film in quite a few areas. For instance, the story to me flows better. It feels more unique. It feels like it's more of its own thing instead of a teenage karate version of Rocky. I also think the love story here between Kamiko and Daniel, I think the love story is so much more resonant and strong between those two. And I like the fact that they just don't do a tournament again. It's a one-on-one fight to the death, which gives it a new set of stakes. And then at the same time, also creates a whole new dynamic. It adds a certain edge to this teen drama series that honestly was kind of unexpected, especially for the second movie. And it still has a lot of the elements that just made the first film so great, but it expands and just elevates those elements. And in some cases puts them up front and center, which I think was key to this film's success. It puts the focus on Daniel and Miyagi. And the bond those two had in the first film was easily the most successful thing in that movie. Other than, the villains who were memorable and fun. But it was those two pillars that just made that film special. And there's a good chunk of that movie where they're just trying to get to know each other and you don't really have that bond quite yet. In The Karate Kid Part 2, that bond is already established, so you can just focus on spending more time with these characters and developing them and providing more depth to these characters as a result. This sequel provides a lot more depth to Miyagi, which I thought was great when it comes to the friendship that he had with Sato and how things fell apart and how there's this rivalry between the two of them that has remained active for decades, and now they're trying to bury the hatchet. I love how Daniel also has to find a way to grow up and be a man. I love that about this movie, that this is his moment in time where he matures and is able to hold his own and be a bit of a badass and get the girl. And the villains, while they're not probably as memorable overall as what you had in the Cobra Kai dojo in the first movie, they're still really strong. I really like Chosen. I think Chosen's a great villain. He's just as cocky as Johnny Lawrence and just as much of a badass, if not more so, because he actually did get a shot in on Miyagi. One of the only people in the entire franchise to actually hit Miyagi. So, Chosen was a total badass in his own way. And the character, just like Johnny Lawrence, became an even more badass and even more strong character in Cobra Kai, but that's a whole other story. But what you have here is still really strong, really solid, really memorable, and a lot of fun to watch. So yeah, I love this script. I just think the script is great. The whole Okinawa setting was really inspired. The love story between Kumiko and Daniel was sweet and charming and very memorable, and it was such a damn shame that they didn't carry that on further throughout the franchise. And by the end of the movie, Daniel learns new lessons in life, as well as new karate moves and new aspects of Miyagi's teachings, and puts them to use in a dire circumstance and turns things around. And it's just really satisfying. The film also features a really rock solid cast. I mean, Ralph Macchio, once again, is just at the top of his game as Daniel LaRusso. I would honestly say this is probably, along with Distant Thunder, which is a very underrated film as well in its own right, with Ralph Macchio and John Lithgow, I would say that this is definitely one of his best performances. I even think his performance in this is even better than his performance in the first Karate Kid. Pat Morita, once again, just wonderful, just magnificent as a Mr. Miyagi. Love this role, love this character, total legend. Still has the same great chemistry with Ralph Macchio, as well as the wit. Nobu McCarthy, she was also really quite good as Yuki. And she had her own little sweet romance that was rekindled with Miyagi that I really liked too. Tamlyn Tomita, in her first ever film role, nailed it as Kumiko. She was charismatic, she was charming, she was cute, she had instant electric chemistry and vibes with Ralph Macchio. You bought that the two were in love with each other. They were a really good couple. Yuji Okumoto is chosen. Played another great hothead, another guy who you loved to hate, but could hold his own when it comes to fighting and be intimidating in that capacity, which makes Daniel's eventual victory all the more surprising when he's able to just kick his ass at the end of the movie. Danny Kamekona, Kona, my bad, is Sato. Also really like that performance. Love the tension between him and Pat Morita. The two really were good adversaries. They really had what felt like a legitimate grudge with one another. It was very believable. And then there are a few other people in the cast and crew, like Joey Miyashihima as Toshio and Mark Hiyashi as Taro. They were fine too. Martin Kove in his little bit as John Kreese in the beginning, that really did showcase how far gone Kreese was as a person. I love that opening as well, where Miyagi is able to outsmart him and win his fight with Kreese by not really getting that involved. I don't even think he really lays much of a finger on him. He just dodges his blows, uses Kreese's anger against him, and wins. William Zabka, he's only in it for a little bit, but it was nice to have him there as Johnny, just to have that whole moment with him and Kreese where this is a point in time where Johnny realizes that Kreese is kind of insane and he's not really the same kind of person that he initially thought he was for so long. Kreese is dangerous. He's a bad influence. That's a scene that helped humanize Johnny Lawrence's character. And I think that scene alone is a big reason why Cobra Kai, the Netflix show, even exists in the first place. Is because of that moment makes it so Johnny isn't entirely 100% unsalvageable as a person. And you actually sympathize with him. And yeah, there's also a few other actors and actresses. I mean, Clarence Gilliard plays like one of the participants in the ice breaking scene, and he was in Top Gun. He was also in a few other 80s classics. So he's a guy that you've seen in a lot of stuff, so you'd probably notice him if you saw him in this movie. He was the computer geek character in Die Hard. The quarterback is toast. Like he was that guy. Now, other than the cast, I mean, there's other notable elements of this movie. The cinematography by James Crabb. I think it was the same cinematographer the first film. I could be wrong, but the cinematography in this was just impressive. It was incredible. This film had some great direction by John G. Avildsen, and then had some equally as impressive cinematography. The shots of the Hawaiian setting and landscape are some of the most beautiful, gorgeous shots that you will ever see when it comes to showcasing the beauty of nature and just the other sequences throughout the movie. Even the simple shots of just Daniel and Kumiko together having tea, and then that moment where they kiss, or the scene where they're going to the castle. Like, even those sequences are just elevated to a completely different level because of this cinematography. It's just a great looking movie. I could watch this film over and over again, not just for the story and for the strength of the characters and the performances, but also just because it's such a great film to watch visually. The editing was also excellent by John G. Avildsen, David Garfield, and Jane Curson. The best of the editing definitely did appear when it comes to the training sequences, or when it comes to the finale, the fight to the death between Daniel and Chosen. And then, of course, you have the score by Bill Conti, which I also feel is one of his best scores. This score is stupendous. It's spectacular. It's a really good score, and it builds upon the pieces of music that were so strong and so good and memorable in the first movie, and then adds its own flavor to it, this Asian influence flavor that is just awesome. It's a really special score, and I think it's one of his best scores. And I do feel that it has a better pacing than the first film too. It's not over 2 hours. It's only 113 minutes, and it has a more brisk pace to it. Things tend to flow a little bit faster, and it definitely does help that they don't have to establish so much. They can just pick up where the first film left off, and then go into a different direction when it comes to the story or the characters. So yeah, I know this isn't a long review, but I don't really have a whole lot else to say about the movie. It's a really solid sequel that I highly recommend you watch, especially if you're a fan of the first film, or even if you were kind of iffy on the sequel. I think it's worth revisiting, and definitely if you are just getting into Cobra Kai, which I know there's probably a decent amount of people out there that are doing just that. And if you like what you see in Cobra Kai, like definitely check out the Karate Kid Part 2 so you can appreciate where Chosen started and also get to see why the bond between Daniel and Kumiko is so special. And yes, there is one more thing I have to mention before I go, and it is the title, not necessarily the title track, but the hit track from the film's soundtrack, The Glory of Love by Peter Cetera. That's a really grand, great song. It fits the whole spirit of the film really well, and that's definitely worth listening to. Uh, so yeah, that's my thoughts on The Karate Kid Part 2. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you later. See ya.